The situation with term limits is very appealing. Everyone thinks, you know, people get in there and then they become part of the system, and that becomes bad for their representation of the people. I myself, my one real fear about going to Washington and representing you down there is that something could happen and I might drink too much of the water down there and breathe too much of the air. So the one campaign promise I have made is to myself, and then I'll get my bony rear end back here every single time that I can. And that's because I recharge myself and find out more about you so that I can represent you properly. If I don't represent you, you got the term limit switch in your hand every 2 years. You can fire me. I'm here looking for a job, and I will be looking for a job 2 years thereafter. If I'm elected, I'll definitely try to get reelected. Whether or not I go for a third term is a toss-up, maybe, but beyond that, you know, in my case, term limits, I'm 60 years old right now. I'd be almost 62 when sworn in. So there's some term limits in there. But Ms. Denigan is correct. You either have to change the Constitution of the United States or change 50 state constitutions to get term limits. Neither of those two things are going to happen in the short term, folks. So you know what? It's up to you. You got term limits in your hand every time there's an election. When you go and you vote, think first, vote second. We got a major problem with sovereignty in the United States. 100 years ago, everybody knew what sovereignty was. Maybe it made us the unsophisticated people in the room in a lot of global environments, but we were also generating more money than anybody else on the planet 100 years ago. And that can happen again. It will not happen if we cede our sovereignty. I have grave reservations about how far we can go with the United Nations. I have grave reservations with how far we can go with the Congress of the United States. And you want to make it global? Please. I would seriously consider a bill I don't know that we can pull out of the United Nations. I think that we need to be on record as having it being an advisory board, if that, and having it leave our country and not be its biggest contributor are two very, very appealing things as far as I'm concerned. Right. The free trade treaties that we see going around the world, and especially the Treaty of the Sea, that's up for consideration right now, have their pluses and their minuses. We live in a global world and we're all connected. But if you look at the nuts and bolts of something, especially this Treaty of the Sea, you see that it contains funding mechanisms directly for the United Nations. All of the mining rights are supposedly money that doesn't belong to anybody. The United Nations will take it. And so if all of a sudden they start getting money, they will start getting power, and we have to decide what kind of a world we want to live in, just like we have to decide what kind of a nation we want to live in. I believe that the sovereignty of the United States is a critical issue, and that we have to have all of our decisions informed by that. And we can't just give away the store. We can't give away the store by letting the Federal Reserve rule in our financial system. We can't give away the store by giving our sovereignty away. That said, trade agreements have to be made of some sort because we live in a world where everybody's connected. Right now, in fact, I have read the owner's manual for the United States of America. It's pretty simple. I notice there are copies of it back in the back for anybody that doesn't have one. It's the Constitution of the United States. It tells you right in there what money is. If that's the basis of our government, let's base our government on it. I think the Federal Reserve is doing a great deal more harm than good. I think that it's a privately held corporation, and there won't be any books anywhere that you'll find to audit. So the real question for Congressman Paul is, okay, Doc, what do we do next? And by the way, if I am lucky enough to be your representative in the next Congress, one of the things I look forward to most greatly is working with Ron Paul. But the fact of the matter is that we have to decide, do we have the courage to run our government the way the Constitution of the United States says we should run it? And if that's the case, we have to develop the political courage that hasn't been developed in this country since Andrew Jackson. Shut down the Fed, tell the Treasury to issue money that's based on hard currency, And in this day and age, with global digital infrastructure, what we will see is several other forms of currency popping up that we'll all get a chance to use simultaneously. The big problem we have with the Fed is it makes money elastic. It allows the government to do anything it wants, get more anytime it wants, and defer the costs for those things onto your great-grandchildren. When we stop that, there will be a lot of pain and suffering, and it'll come from starvation in Congress because they'll only be able to spend what they got. What a concept. That's what I do at home. I suspect that's what you do too. So I don't have any problems at all with auditing the Fed, and I think it's only the first step. Thank you. You've got the microphone. I would say that there has to be some kind of an insurance pool to level the costs, because the costs in many cases would be very, very difficult to be borne by individuals. And insurance is something that's used everywhere. You have insurance on your car, you have insurance on your house, and you know, if your house burns down and mine doesn't, am I supposed to say, well, you know, Bob's okay, he'll figure something out? No, we're not opposed to insurance. We're opposed to putting additional levels of administrative overhead on a financial system by trying to get the government to do something and then, you know, call it efficient. That's not going to happen. The insurance process is one that should be governed by the free market, not by the government. All governments are political from top to bottom. They exist by having to pander to everybody, from the lowest bureaucrat to the highest executive, and that just takes time. That's why it costs $20,000 to write a $4,000 check. So we got to have insurance. It's just a question of who's going to issue that insurance, and that's the critical thing that's going to save you and everybody else money.